Hello everybody, a short video about a short poem. You may remember that I did a video a while ago about a series of poems called 前出塞. Here we have 后出塞, which then, as you might guess, is a sort of sequel to the first series. The first series, both of them are probably called in manuscript, I guess, just 出塞, and they are have received the later titles 前出塞 and 后出塞, merely in order to distinguish them. I neglected to put in the English title here. It means exiting the passes. That is, these are poems that describe the life of soldiers in the military. And if you watch that video, you may remember that the poems in that series share a kind of folk song-like idiom. They are not strictly in the classical style, though of course the folk song style was also a tradition which stretched fairly far back already in the Tang Dynasty. Anyway, I'm not going to talk that much about this. I just choose one poem from the second series to talk about. There are 5 poems in this series. The first series had 9, and I made quite a hefty selection to talk about. I think I talked about 5 or 6. I'm restricting myself to 1 at this point. They do differ a little bit, the first and the second series. The first series is more strictly folk song-like. The second series, which we are looking at right now, is less folk song-like. The idiom is a little bit more classical. It looks to me rather like a standard 古诗, that is ancient style poem. Another thing about the first series was that it was basically a description of one single character. Du Fu impersonates a soldier who enters the military and then his various experiences in the army, and then ends up as an old and wise man. This second series is not really like that. It's more like a series of vignettes, and they have a sort of tone in them that is somewhat in common with the first series. They are quite critical, implicitly critical of the policy of militarism in the Tang Dynasty. But this one, I think, is almost hilariously so, and that is why I choose to talk about it. All of these poems are believed to have been written before the Great War, the Andalusian Rebellion. So they belong to a period when the militarism of the Tang Dynasty was still directed outwards. There was such a thing as huge possessions in Central Asia to take care of, and military threats on all fronts. But the idea really behind all of these poems is that the military is extremely corrupt, and that it's not doing things that are strictly necessary for the empire's survival. We see this already in the first line here. 古人重守边，今人重高勋. The ancients valued guarding the frontiers. People today value great rewards. Owen translates, well, 高勋, I think it can just as well mean just great deeds, but great rewards works as well. The word 勋 originally means like an extraordinary, important deed. So that is really what it's about. The military nowadays, they are not interested in just protecting the border of the country. They are doing all kinds of things in order to distinguish themselves, and of course, by way of that, earning great rewards. 岂知英雄主出师更长云。英雄主 is his term for Xuanzong, the ruler, our warrior ruler, our hero ruler. How could one have known that our heroic ruler sends forth armies, 出师, continuously as long clouds? I think this is 更长云, is that the image I get in my mind is that the armies sort of blend with the clouds of the horizon. It's an image of their abundance, of how many they are. 六合以一家，四夷且孤军. Here comes the poet's objection, you might say, to this policy. 六合以一家, all corners of the world. 六合 is the four directions, and heaven and earth, or up and down, it stands for the whole world, is already like one family. And the various foreigners, the 四夷, they are about to be they are in the process of being reduced to a single troop, 孤军. That's how I interpret this. I think we are now be surrounded by barbarians. I think this is not exactly what he wants to drive at. Why should it be the Tang army? We are about to become like a single army among the barbarians. I don't think it sounds like that at all. He's trying to express, why the policy of militarism is useless, and says there is already peace in the world. Whatever opposition we might face is just single spots of irrelevant and isolated militias, something like that. 遂使皮虎士奋身勇所闻. And I think what I just said, that interpretation is borne out by what follows. So let's look at this here. 皮虎士, troops like tigers and leopards. This is classic. It's very classic as an image of soldiers in the army. The strange line here is this, the second line. 奋身勇所闻. I think this is a bit strange. Bravely do as told. 勇, usually an adjective, but here it's used in the place of a verb. So being brave, doing brave things about what is heard, or in regard of what is heard. Owen and other comments that I've seen interpret this as the intentions of the ruler. My feeling is that it's sort of, they are sort of really, the soldiers are drumming up their courage, they rouse out themselves, as Owen says, and expend their bravery in something that they've just heard. That is more my feeling about this. And what is the result? 拔剑击大荒. They pull out the sword and just strike into the wilderness, like sort of at random almost. 日收伏马群. This is such a great couplet. I'm sorry. This is why we read the poetry like this. 拔剑击大荒，日收伏马群. They draw their swords and they just strike at random in the wilderness. And what do? They go out and they bring home horses, perhaps wild horses. Every day, more of the same. But it's not enough with that. 誓开玄冥北，持以奉吾君. We have vowed to open the land north of Xuanming. Yes, that is correct. What is Xuanming then? That's very relevant. Xuanming is the god of the north. So if you say that something is north of the god of the north, that is the utmost north, it's impossible. This is really a picture of impossibility, to push the borders north of the most extreme point of north. You get really, so you're supposed to get the sense of hubris, how unnecessary this kind of warfare is, and then take the lands north of the North Pole, basically, and lay it at the feet of our Lord. So that is really the whole poem like that. I think it's just a wonderful satire, and it comes from here. I think you have to understand it, that we're not an army surrounded by barbarians. There are really no barbarians to fight, almost. 遂是披虎十分是有所闻, being brave about a rumor, pulling out their swords and just ram it into the wilderness as such, the great wilderness. And in the future we will do even better. We will push the borders of the empire north of the North Pole. Have you ever heard? So, yeah, that is, my friends, the only one poem in the series that I'm going to talk about. But the other ones are quite good as well. I should perhaps mention that, later commentators, they frequently, see An Lushan in all of this, because they understand that the poems don't mention An Lushan, so they were probably written before the Great War, and they assume that all the criticism that Du Fu heaps on the militarism and the generals and the army, etc., has to refer to An Lushan. But, I mean, it doesn't necessarily refer to any particular general. And, of course, perhaps, An Lushan's rebellion was the result of mismanagement of the army. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Du Fu is that specific in his criticism here. So that's just the social context and the historical context. But I think this is a very good poem, and I will stop right now. Thank you for listening.